Shut up and sit down.
By all means, go for it. Have fun. Just leave me alone.
People are coming together more and more and more and more as the government has been failing us more and more.
I'm against being shitty to people.
You can't research your way into understanding somebody.
One way or another, I'd rather have the fight now.
Let me know when you're up.
Hello, everyone. We are live from Yale Rev 2021 with Glenn KANE Jacobs. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's more than a pleasure. So I'm very much excited to hear what you have to say later. We've had some really awesome speakers so far this weekend. It's been their production quality here is top notch.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying that.
I can't believe that Edward Snowden was here via a video link. That's unbelievable.
That was really awesome to hear from him. And then, we had Ron Paul last night.
Yeah.
I was joking around with one of my good friends who's the West Coast regional director for YAL about you. He was like, I was trying to get him the pyrotechnics, but they told me it was too expensive. That definitely would have been a nice cherry on top.
Sure.
But I was definitely want to ask you about how you transitioned from the life in that public life into a much more private but still public, as far as you went from a performer to a public servant. How is that shift from kind of being the one everyone was looking up to and just kind of going around doing all the things to just being more of a servant and on a local level?
For me, I think it's a lot easier than for someone that would come into government or politics that had never been in the public eye before. I'm used to it. Mm-hmm. So in that respect, as you said, it's probably not scrutinized by as many people, mm-hmm. but scrutinized in a different way. In the entertainment world, people don't necessarily always want to see you fall on your face. They don't go out of their way to anything you do is wrong, right? Whereas in this, of course, there's a certain segment of the population, this is true for everyone, mm-hmm. That no matter what you do is going to be wrong because you're a Republican, because you're a Democrat,
right?
Because you're whatever. So that was an adjustment. Luckily, I don't really listen to anybody. Well, you can't. I mean,
right.
All you can do is think that you have your own principles and you have to apply those, mm-hmm. and go forward that way, because if you are always listening to what people say, you're just going to be drifting in the wind.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate in that respect as mm-hmm. well. But I'm just like everyone else, man. I'd like everybody to like me and no one to say mean things about me. Right. But I understand this is also the world that I'm living in.
Mm-hmm. I definitely, you're a very unique person as far as the fact that you were in the public eye and then went into politics as a Republican. That's a little bit, I know with wrestling, that's probably not as uncommon of a political stance to have in that profession. But as far as, just being part of that kind of profession and then going into more right-wing politics, was there any pushback from some of your friends from performing life?
No, absolutely not. And I live in East Tennessee, which is a very red part of the country.
Right.
So, in that respect, that's who I am as well. Mm-hmm. And wrestling's a little different, and we're not, I think, when folks think of entertainment, they think that everybody's real far left. And that's not necessarily true of WWE. I think we're actually a lot more tolerant than say Hollywood is.
Right.
Different people's points of views and
mm-hmm.
opinions. So there's actually never a problem at all. In fact, everybody in WWE, all of my friends, wanted me to succeed, even if they were on the other side of the aisle from me.
That's awesome.
It was more important, because who I was and because of our bond that we had through mm-hmm. WWE than any sort of political differences.
That's awesome. That's really reassuring to hear, because there's plenty of other people who try to make that switch and then they just get completely torn apart by their friends, whichever side of the aisle they choose to go on to.
Right.
So I'm curious. There's a constant running joke of, that politics is kind of like professional wrestling. How you've done both. Is it? Do you get that same kind of vibe of, that for show, fighting against each other and then, going and getting drinks afterwards?
For me, there's massive difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
In wrestling, we had to put on a good show, and people had the choice whether to watch or not.
Right.
So if we didn't put on a good show, they didn't watch, and it hurt the product. That's not true in politics.
Right.
No matter what happens, you have to watch the show because the show affects you.
Right.
So in that respect, in that comparison, I'm like, it's not even true. And also, it's not actually. As far as at least what I see, it's not like you have the Republicans and Democrats in Knox County, and they're all putting the show for the camera, and that's not the case by any stretch of the imagination. It is very much now, I think, especially at this point in time in the country, there are some serious differences, and I'm not putting on a show for the camera. I mean, I believe what I believe. Right. Now, of course, I mean, I do, since we're all in the same community, I do have to work with people, and I understand that. Yeah. But, I never do that in a disingenuous way. Mm-hmm. So now, of course, when you look at the national thing, you realize, there is an establishment, and you have established Republicans and established Democrats, and they're a lot closer, I think, than probably any of us should be comfortable with. Yeah, I think it's for sure. In that respect. Mm-hmm. But the people the people I respect, like Rand Paul and Thomas Massey, they're not in there just, hey, let's put on a show for the camera and work something out behind the scenes. What you see on the camera is what they're doing behind the scenes as well.
For sure. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was kind of my next question. With the popularity and name recognition that you have, you probably could have, run for something like Congress or Senate, or, something a little bit larger on a national or even statewide level. What made you choose to stay so focused on a local race?
Well, first of all, I don't want to run for federal office. I
don't blame you.
Yeah. Because I'd have to go to Washington, D.C. and be around those people all the time. Right. But also, I think that, I don't think that's where the battle is, man. I think the battle is in the state and local governments. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that's where the action really is. And, you look at what happens in Congress, and
not much.
No, not much. And, if you're in the House, you're one of 435 votes, right? Yeah. And you have a bully pulpit to some. Well, actually, you don't even have that.
Not anymore.
Very well, no.
Yeah.
In the Senate, it's a little different, but even Rand, the reason that everybody knows about Rand now is just because the circumstances and his stance have elevated him, but it's his bully pulpit more so than anything else. Yeah. But when you really want to do things policy-wise, I think now, especially, it's more important to work within the state and the local governments. Mm-hmm. And people don't look at it that way, because we all see the federal government and all the national figures on TV, and we don't realize how much influence and control state and local governments have over this. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. That was a really exciting thing for me when I saw that you were going to be running for a more local race. Because again, you probably could have gone and tried to do that, but you wouldn't have. Like you're saying, there's not much that you can do effectively from that level. You could have gotten a bully pulpit and you made some issues more talked about or something like that. But I was really happy to see someone that choose to go down ballot more than they had to really accomplish something tangible. Because there's so much, like you're saying, there's a rush to go to Washington, and which I find extremely weird from constitutional conservatives and libertarians. It's like, we are founded on a belief that the federal government shouldn't have that much power, that no one can go to Washington and then make decisions for your home. That's not the point. And because we've seen so much power get pushed to Washington, now even the ones that are supposed to be fighting that are still rushing to grab that power, and they say it's to bring it back, but that doesn't ever end up working.
Case, right?
So what are some of your favorite things that you've been able to accomplish since getting elected?
The number one thing is I stood very strong against the lockdowns and all the COVID mandates. Unfortunately, it often wasn't my decision to make, just the way that structured and our county structured. But nevertheless, I made myself very clear into where I was with those things. I think that during the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen the greatest government overreach perhaps in history at this point, and it doesn't look like it's over anytime soon.
Right.
I think a litmus test for your principal libertarian conservatives is what they did and what they will do going forward. With the pandemic, you finally see Republicans standing up and saying we're not doing that anymore.
Right.
We're done. And then you see some that are not.
Right.
So you can tell.
Having Thomas Massey sue Nancy Pelosi was a highlight.
That was a big deal. And then of course, again, everything that Rand's doing right now, as far as on the national level, and showing that Dr. Fauci and the medical establishment, there's some real questions that need to be answered. And we have experts literally telling us you have to do this, and then they change their mind, and then they could have been the people that actually created this in the first place.
Right. But you got to trust the science, man.
You have to trust the science, even though they define what the science is.
Right.
And if you have any suspicions about that, then you're questioning science. So you're questioning a human being who they're not gods.
Right. Right.
So it's great to see Rand do that.
Yes.
And that's seriously, that's my I think even though it's not really an achievement, that's the most important thing that I've been able to do is as much as I could stand against all that stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely in the beginning, like when 2 weeks to flatten the curve happened, I was like, all right, that kind of makes sense, I guess. Like they shouldn't have the power to do it, but the states that weren't mandating the lockdowns, it was just kind of a suggestion. I was like, all right,
and everybody was getting pummeled, and we were all sort of kind of like, what's going on? And then it was like, okay, this is, like you said, this is not cool, but hopefully we can just get through this. And then it went from 15 days to flatten the curve to
530 days.
30 days to stop the spread. Then the next thing, then the next thing, and then the next thing. Yeah. And I hope that people are starting to realize now that it's never going to end until we say it ends. Yeah.
Well, the government, especially the federal government, never lets go of power once they have it.
Don't let a good crisis go to waste.
Exactly. There's no reason for them to let us go back to the way that we were living in 2019. Right. We've shown very, very tangibly how little we're going to fight back against government overreach. It's the same with the gun issue. In my mind, they banned automatic weapons and no one did anything about it. They're talking about banning assault weapons, which is a very loosely defined term, and still not a whole lot of pushback is happening. The time for us to have actually pushed back, I think was many years prior, and now we've shown them that we're not going to push back. We're just going to take it, and they can do almost whatever they want. And it's terrifying. But luckily there are people that are fighting back now finally. And I think this broke some people. Some people finally realized what we're talking about, that they won't give us that back.
Yeah. And I would talk a lot about this. It's the precedent. Like we said, okay, if it's just a short period of time, big deal, who cares? Well, the big deal is that they can do it.
Right.
And they will not let go. They just won't let go.
Right.
And they've set a precedent now that they can do it. So they're going to do it again. Next time they won't need as big an excuse. And then finally it becomes normalized. And that's the real issue.
Yep.
Is not necessarily that the government does this certain thing here, which seems like no big deal at the time. But that slippery slope argument, and everybody excuses liberals of taking, a slippery slope. It's all you guys talk about. It's like, well, look where we're at.
Yeah.
Because we started talking about it years and years and years ago.
Yeah.
And no one did anything,
Mhm.
and now it's pretty late in the game.
Yeah, I think it's especially hearing from Ron Paul last night, and then we were watching a short documentary about his campaign in '08 afterwards, and it's insane how much he's right about so many things. And if people had listened to him in 2008, we could have avoided a lot of the crises that we've gone through, whether it's the financial stuff with the Federal Reserve, or gun rights, criminal justice policy, like so many of these things. We could have avoided all of the riots last summer if we had listened to him 10 years ago and fixed some of these problems a decade ago.
Right.
And so it's very interesting to watch just him become right over and over again.
Yeah.
And COVID was just another one on top of the list.
Yes, that's exactly right, unfortunately.
Yeah, I hope he stops being right. like we need to be done with this trend. We don't need Orwellian dystopian stuff going on right now.
Well, unfortunately, I think he is right.
Yeah.
So.
It's as long as we still have people and like groups like YAL, I think pushing the Overton window back in the correct direction.
Yeah.
I just got done talking to Jeff Shipley out of Iowa. He's a state house rep there, and just getting more people like that elected is.
And you're
all
right.
we can do.
That's a term that's relatively new to me, is the Overton window.
Mhm.
But certainly that's what we're seeing. Right? Is it used to be? Think about it. 2 years ago, none of this stuff was even on the horizon.
Right.
And now it's somewhat controversial, but for a lot of folks, it's not.
Mhm.
And so, that Overton window of what's acceptable in society and what's normalized keeps on getting larger and larger and larger and moving in the wrong direction.
100%. Yeah. And it was crazy to see how many people who, if you had asked them, like you're saying 2 years ago, like, oh, if the government tried to shut down your business, would you let them?
No. They would never do that.
Oh, they would never try. And if they tried, I would fight back.
Meet them at the door.
I would meet them at the door.
Yeah.
And then they shut down their business and they did nothing.
Yeah.
Even libertarians and constitutional conservatives and like principled Republicans still just laid down and let it happen. It was distressing to see, because you're right. And then obviously most of the left was fine with it for a while. Now it's great to see that kind of that horseshoe theory or bottom unity thing going on, where the left is finally pushing back on this stuff too. They've been doing a lot of like the medical freedom stuff, pushing a lot of like the ivermectin research, and that's coming out of the left more than the right now. So we're kind of coalescing against this. It's nice to see finally.
And one of the things that struck me lately is what's happening overseas in Europe and Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it's the French are the ones that are actually in mass out in the streets. We're not going to take it anymore.
Right.
And of course it's a little different there because they've been pushed a lot harder than we have here in the States. But nevertheless, we laugh at the French about all this stuff.
Right.
Like, they're the ones that are actually.
They're really showing us up.
Exactly.
We can't look worse than the French. Come on, guys. Come on.
The French, the Italians in Germany. And then what is happening in Australia? Australia is under martial law.
Right.
I mean, I years ago, I actually lived in Australia for a couple months. It's a lovely place. It's one of my favorite places on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Liberal democracy. And now you can't leave your house. And they have soldiers patrolling the streets. It's like, this is like a dystopian novel or a dystopian movie. It's ironic now to see that other places in the world are the ones that are standing up and trying to take back their liberties. And here in the States, we're kind of laid back and going, okay, cool.
Yeah. I remember even, it was 2 years ago or so with the yellow vest protests going on in France. I was thinking the same thing then. It's like, how are they more based than us? Like,
exactly.
why is this happening?
Exactly.
I wanted to buy a plane ticket to Paris. I'm like, I want to kick gas grenades back into the police line that they're throwing at me. That sounds like fun. There's so many videos out there. And I'm meanwhile, we're marching in lines or not even marching for anything at that time. I agree with you. It is kind of sad to see the rest of the world kind of show us up. but we're getting there, and it's starting to become a lot more popular of a thing to do, is to actually show up and make our voices be heard very loudly.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
All right. Well, I appreciate
it. Thanks for your time.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. I'm really looking forward to hearing you later.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll see you back here later on for that rapid fire interview out in the hallway.